Is mass tourism turning us all against tourists? Fed up with packed streets and rising prices, residents of the world's major tourist destinations are striking back. But is demanding an end to mass tourism a wise response, or could it sentence their own economies to suffer? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is the mass tourism backlash. Thanks to everything from the rise of budget airlines to millions more people with money and access to travel, mass tourism has taken off. And it's weighing heavily on some of the world's most precious tourist sites. So much so that locals are revolting and governments are being forced to find new ways to manage huge numbers of visitors. Here's a look now at how mass tourism has changed some of the world's most treasured destinations.
Locals revolt against mass tourism in Europe's popular destinations. Spain is leading calls to regulate the tourist industry. Residents marched in Malaga, Mallorca, Alicante and Barcelona. They all have similar grievances. Over-tourism has increased the cost of living, resulting in locals unable to afford housing. Tourism is a lifeline for these cities. In Barcelona, the tourism industry welcomed 26 million visitors last year and accounts for 15% of the city's economy. But rents have increased 68% in the past decade. Residents blaming short-term rentals have plastered stickers on apartments saying, "This was my house," chanting "Tourist, go home," and even spraying tourists with water pistols.
The problem is the excess of tourists. The excess, and that the owners of the houses want to obtain more profit to speculate with the apartments, living with more money that the tourists can give them and the people who live and work in Barcelona cannot pay.
Now, as part of the solution, Barcelona plans to ban tourist rentals. The city will scrap the licenses of over 10,000 Airbnb-type apartments by 2028.
All the experts from international observatories tell us that demand is infinite, that it can continue to grow exponentially in the coming years, with growth rates between 3 and 8%. Regarding the demand, there is little we can do. Where we can act is on the supply.
Yet, the tourist industry is not happy about the plans. They believe this could increase the number of illegal rentals and damage the city's vital tourism industry.
I think it is a populist measure, because I have already said that this was not going to solve the housing problem, which is the one that is really being wielded. Secondly, it is unfair, because there are people who have made an investment, created jobs, generated taxes.
Barcelona is not alone. In recent years, cities like Berlin have also announced restrictions on Airbnbs. Over-tourism also puts extra pressure on cities' infrastructure. It has great relevance for Venice. The city is sinking. Mass tourism and rising water levels are damaging its historical heritage. So, Venice has started a pilot program to charge day trippers a €5 entrance fee to deter people from visiting. Aiming to reduce the number of disruptive party tourists, Amsterdam launched a Stay Away campaign and implemented restrictions in its famous red light district. And Greece's Santorini island plans to put a cap on cruise ship arrivals.
The arrival of big numbers of people put a serious strain on the local infrastructure. Our roads were never designed for this many thousands of people. Our narrow cobblestone streets were not designed for this either.
2024 is predicted to be a record-breaking year for tourism. So the backlash might continue to grow as the authorities struggle to find a solution, making tourism enjoyable for both locals and visitors.
So while millions more people have the means and access to travel than decades before, the size of sites and cities like Venice and Barcelona remain the same. So how can tourism be managed? Well, joining me now to try to answer that is the Deputy Mayor of Barcelona, Mr. Jordi Valls. Thank you so much for being with us. You know, before we talk about solutions, I'd first like to get your personal perspective on what's actually changed in your city that's led to the backlash that we've seen. Just how saturated is Barcelona right now, and where has it left the local population?
Probably the most important question is if you have answered one question. Is the tourism unstoppable? We have to take in consideration there are two big markets like India and China right now. It's not enough mature to travel. It just started, and this is a question right now. If today our citizens have worried about the implication of the tourist in his current life, what's going on in the future when these two markets, Chinese and Indian markets, will be present in Europe in all these cities?
Okay,
The
many would
only
argue
way
that they are already, but I think one of the problems in Barcelona, with the people I've spoken to, is that they think the government has failed to manage mass tourism now over decades, that there really hasn't been a plan in place when they have seen the numbers consistently increase to the point of pricing out their own residents and making people, locals, very uncomfortable. Do you think your government has failed to be proactive about the leaps in tourism?
in terms of public policy, I think Barcelona has been one of the most vanguard cities in Europe. We have urban planification in order to ban hotels and to ban tourist apartments, and we started that in 2017, 2018. We have planification to try to control a specific retail sector in the streets of Barcelona. We put on the table right now systems to control the public performance in the places like Sagrada Familia and the others. And I think Barcelona, together with Amsterdam, has been one of the cities to create the public policy in the tourism.
Okay, so why hasn't it worked well enough to stop the backlash we're seeing now? And what are you planning to do going forward?
Because in Europe right now we have an important question regarding to the housing. Housing is a big concern in the different cities in Europe, and tourists create pressure to the price of housing. When some specific asset like housing, it's moved to the residential asset to economical asset to use for the tourist, we increase the price of the places to the people in Barcelona have been possibly to live. This is one of the big matters right now. And the other question is the planification. We have enough capabilities to planificate the city of Barcelona, but not metropolitan area. And right now we are banned hotels in Barcelona, but it's possible to create hotels around Barcelona and to visit Barcelona.
So what are you going to do about the metropolitan area, especially the issue of Airbnbs, people renting out their apartments and spaces to tourists rather than to locals for a better profit?
The first question is how we are able to get information regarding these platforms. And we are working or has been working in the last 2 years with 20 cities around Europe in order to Europe set up a specific legislation to obligate these economical platforms or digital platforms to share this information to local authorities. It's difficult for us to try to control when this information it's only to the platforms, and we are not in a possibility to get this information. And the other, we banned public apartments to the 2028 and we stopped the real estate market regarding the tourist apartments only with this decision.
Okay. Let me just ask you then straight out what you make then of the protests that we saw a few weeks ago in your city. You know, for example, people spraying tourists with water guns, chanting tourists go home. Do you condemn that or condone that response because you understand their frustration? And do they understand as well that they might be hurting some of their own people and their local businesses?
First of all, I understand the position of the Barcelona citizens and his concern about the mass tourism. I understand that. I understand the demonstrations, but I condemn demonstrations put in the table and the signal of the tourists. The problem is not the tourist itself. And it's important to take into consideration these people right now you see in the screen is 2,500 people. It's a small demonstration. And for me, these people have right to do that, but these people have no right to create problems to the tourists are enjoying the city, because probably one of these people right now create this problem is the tourist itself. The tourist is one of the right the welfare state create in Europe and create around the world. Until 100 years ago, there are 25 million tourists around the world. Today, there are 1.9 billion tourists around the world. And the people right now are creating or demonstration the problem and the concern regarding the tourists in Barcelona. These people at the same time is tourists in Istanbul, is tourists in Venice, and is tourists in around the world. It's important to take in consideration that. We have to control the tourist, but control with a specific comfort to the tourist itself.
Okay,
The
and are
tourist
you
is-
going to get them under control? Are your plans solid enough to satisfy your public?
The plans never are solid enough. We create public policy to control the offer, to control the supply, because the demand is unstoppable. But we have to create new public policy regarding the tourists. We banned public apartments, we banned hotels, we try to control the retail industry, the retail specific to the tourists in the city. But at the same time, it's important for this city to control his brand and try to improve this brand in order to focus in the tourists we want to be and to enjoy the city.
Okay. Mayor Valls, we will have to leave it there. I'd like to thank you so much for being with us on the Newsmakers. So let's broaden out the discussion now. And joining me also from Barcelona is member of the Neighborhood Assembly for Tourism Degrowth, Daniel Pardo Rivacoba. From Stockholm, Sweden, author, travel writer, and presenter Doug Lansky. And from Glasgow, lecturer in the Department of Tourism and Events at Glasgow Caledonian University, Michael O'Regan. Thanks all so much for being with me. Daniel, I'll start with you in Barcelona. Your local government has said that they are working on solutions, but it's impossible to have plans that are solid enough because the demand is unstoppable. So you've seen their efforts so far. Are you convinced they're doing the best they can against what they consider unstoppable demand?
I'm absolutely convinced they are not. And they are not doing that mainly because they're not interested in doing that. The party of the mayor is the party that built the tourism model, the tourism mass model of Barcelona since 30 years. And for the moment, they're just trying to silence the people and to demobilize organized people who have been protesting in the last months.
What do you say to them when they say that you are underappreciating how much tourism actually contributes to the city, to the local economy, to your Barcelona neighbors that actually benefit from it, that have the businesses that need this revenue?
Well, I just feel that's a lie, a very interesting lie, said by the people who get the profits from tourism, while neighbors and people, the population of Barcelona, just get the impacts, the social and environmental impacts. And it's true, there are jobs. It's just the worst jobs in Barcelona in terms of wages and work conditions.
Okay.
So being pressurized by this touristification process.
Let me ask Doug if that's fair. I mean, is it really just lose-lose then with mass tourism?
If it goes too far, it is. I mean, I think the thing to remember is, like, look how we handled the car industry. When the cars started populating the roads, we didn't turn to the automobile salespeople and say, you regulate it. We set up the people who put in traffic violations, guidelines. We had all sorts of driver's education stuff, safety, seatbelts, parking regulations. We had an entire organization set up to handle management, which is different than what we've done with tourism. We've just turned it over to the stakeholders and say, you do it. And of course they're going to keep doing it. So I think there's a case to say that, we could all be selling whatever nuclear disposal in our backyards. That doesn't mean it's going to be great for everybody. You can make what you make money at doesn't mean that it's best for society and best in the long run.
So Doug, we heard the statistic that says, you cited it yourself. We had 25 million international tourists back in 1950. Today it's over 1.4 billion. But we know, the sizes of these sought-after tourist destinations like Venice and like Barcelona, the size has stayed the same. So is this growth in any way sustainable, or does mass tourism really have to end?
It needs to be managed. So there's space for everybody. We're crowding into the same rooms. We're all flocking to the same places. And it's not the fault of the tourists. They're booking their trips 3, 6, 9 months in advance when there are no crowds in those places and it's off season. It's not really their fault. It's the fault of the destination to set limits on things and manage the number of people coming in. Just like teenagers are going to ask to stay out late, it's up to the parents to say, no, you've got to come home at midnight or 2 in the morning or whatever the regulations are. We all need boundaries.
Okay, so what's the solution? I know you talked about you didn't want to define cities like Barcelona as a theme park, but you had said that they should be using a theme park style model to manage the inflow.
Yeah, it's ironically, the more they use the behind the scenes of Disney, the management of Disney, the less the place will feel like a Disney style park. So Disney puts limits on the number of people that come in. They have tools for spreading out visitors with different ride passes. And, if a big crowd congregates, they can see it on the cameras. They send Mickey Mouse over here and a marching band over here, and it separates it. There are tools you can use, like sending out SMSs with special deals on offer, having bookable times at all the attractions that will actually spread people out and then make that information transparent. So someone who's booking a trip to, say, Barcelona or anywhere else can go online when they're booking their flight and go, oh, the top 10 attractions are fully booked during those dates. I'll book another time, or I'll book someplace else for now. There's plenty of space for us, but we're jamming into the same spots.
Michael, do you agree with that? I mean, is that a workable approach? And also, if you could, talk to us about the even larger trends in tourism. For I mentioned the budget airlines making air travel so cheap to millions of tourists in what used to be poorer countries like China entering the market, and that number is still set to grow.
Yeah, tourism will grow. We're still suffering from a kind of a post-hangover or post-COVID hangover, and maybe it's bounced back in particular locations faster than others. And Barcelona is one of those locations, as well as Lisbon. But there are new destinations opening up. The Chinese market isn't fully back yet, but there are new markets opening from the Middle East and India. So, tourism arrivals or international tourism arrivals will increase. But I think we're missing, the benefits that tourism have given to cities like Barcelona, the post-92 Olympics model. And they've been incredibly successful, and it does contribute to the GDP. It does contribute to the city coffers. But of course, I agree with Doug, it has to be managed. But that's more of a political, decision, and it's, voting in people will make these hard decisions around limiting short-term rentals or tourist taxes, or to increasing infrastructural investment and then investing into social housing. So tourism will increase. I'm not so sure we'll see so many more protests, because often these protests are very, specific to particular locations. It's often, linked to politics. It's linked to other social and cultural factors. And we have to, I suppose, look back at Barcelona, where 70% or 70+% of the population support tourism, and they want tourism, but they want it to be managed.
Better managed. Well, Daniel, I saw you disagree with a point there, and I'd also like to ask you if seeing you so angry and justifiably, upset because your own people are being priced out of their own homes in some cases, do you fear, just as a fellow human being, that all of this is breeding a sort of mild, xenophobia, whereby the second people start to hear a foreign language spoken on their local streets, they get angry. They don't want foreigners, period, there. Does that bother you?
No, it has nothing to do with that. I mean, Barcelona has been a very cosmopolite city since decades. It's not a problem of hearing people talking other languages. It's a problem about the life conditions of people in Barcelona. And I am sorry, Mr. O'Regan, I guess you're misinformed. This is official statistics. More than the half of the population of the city think that tourism went too far and went too big in Barcelona. So what you're saying is just not true. I'm sorry for that. If we're angry, and I'm talking about the population of Barcelona, it's not because there are people talking other languages. It is because people are being fired out from their homes, from their neighborhoods, and from their city. It's because the jobs are concentrating in a sector, in the tourism sector, which, as I said, has the worst conditions in wages and in work conditions. It's a problem. It's a political problem of housing, of work, and of life conditions. It's just that.
Okay. Let me ask Doug this question. I mean, Doug, all of this on the flip side, it's actually really bad for tourists too, because they're not even really able to experience the local culture, which is so unfortunate because travel can be so life-changing, as you are aware, and important to open people's minds and kind of make us all better global citizens. So is this all kind of being destroyed as well through mass tourism?
Yeah, there's a huge upside to tourism. There's a lot of people who want to just do a fly and flop and lay on the beach and leave their worries behind, of course. But there are people that want to get under the skin of a place, and it's a lot harder when we're, shoulder to shoulder with other tourists and we're all clamoring for the same, little cubic, square meter of space. And I think part of the problem is if there's not a sheriff in town. There's not someone that's really patrolling this in a real way. It's like, saying that, again, coming back to the car model, it's like saying we need to sort of control the speed limit, but we can't even agree on the speed limit sign, like what the speed limit should be. We don't have any police pulling people over, and we don't have any speed cameras. So there's no mechanism really to slow this stuff down. And instead, we're doing just the opposite. We have tens or even hundreds of $millions feeding into tourism promotion, and they're getting promotions and bonuses for bringing in more tourists. At the same time, a lot of people are paying lip service to saying, yeah, we need to control it and bring it down. But that's just not the way it's going.
Yeah. Michael, I can see you agreeing with a lot of what was said there. And help us just understand again, if possible. When Daniel says that these jobs in tourism really don't have the kind of dignity they actually should. They're not the high-paid jobs. They're not bringing in the revenue that really translates to the working class of these cities. I mean, when we talk about how many businesses depend on tourism, if they didn't have that, would they be able to move over to businesses like opening more local grocery stores or pharmacies that would help the local community? Would that be an alternative, or are these kind of apples and oranges?
I agree with Daniel that there are negative impacts to excessive tourism, and that it does impact people through increasing rents or a loss of a local store, and that there are some poor quality jobs out there. But there are solutions to many of those problems, whether it be restricting short-term rentals, to investing into infrastructure, sanitation, and public spaces that would benefit locals and tourists. And of course, looking to diversify the economy and trying to support entrepreneurs, local businesses, small to medium-sized enterprises, that will contribute to local people and local neighborhoods. Often this is down to licensing, it's down to restricting maybe new hotel properties in the city center.
And we spoke to the vice mayor of Barcelona, who was specifically commenting on the Airbnb sector that so many locals complain about in cities throughout the world. But he was saying it's incredibly difficult to manage. Is it?
There are many, many solutions with short-term rentals, whether it be total bans or we look at New York, they've introduced regulations that have been quite successful. But of course, there are worries around, many of these properties going under the radar, renting out illegally. But it needs enforcement, it needs inspectors, it needs fines, and needs regulations. The thing is that, tourists don't vote. The people who own many of these properties in cities are voters.
Doug, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you get back also to the economy of this thing, I liken it to, it's like a piece of cake. The tourism should be the frosting on top, say the top 10%. You don't want a cake that's 80% frosting. And a lot of these destinations around the world have had tourism become such a huge part of their economy. And it's dangerous because tourism, although it's powerful and a wonderful economic factor in many ways, it's also very fickle, in the sense that all it takes is one volcano in Iceland, one virus, one terror attack, one, like earthquake or tsunami or whatever, and it's off the map for a while and it crushes the entire economy. So it's not smart for an economy to depend that much. And we seem to be addicted to growth. We came to it's funny that when we look at like the number of throw pillows you have on your bed, you don't say, oh, I've got 8 today. I hope in a few years I'll have 20. We don't project that same kind of growth on things like that, but we need to have a similar approach to the way we look at tourism. We have to get to a certain number and cap it and go, that's what we can handle.
So
no more, no, you know.
when you see the cruise ship industry then continuing to build even bigger ships, I mean, where does that end?
Not in a good place.
You're
That's a
dumping,
dangerous
what,
one.
3,000 to 5,000 people at a time on one small area?
Well, not just that, they're not really spending. If you look like in Key West, they have 50% of their visitors are from cruise ships, but they only spend 8% of the amount. So it's like they've already got all the food they can eat on the ship for free included in the price. They're going to get off, buy a postcard cup of coffee and go to the bathroom and, you know, maybe get a t-shirt. If that's the low-hanging fruit of who you might want to exclude first.
So where is the upside to the cruise ship industry and why are they growing?
They're growing because it's a huge economic, you know, engine, and they know how to manipulate the models. They're smart, they're clever, they have lawyers, they do a divide and conquer policy, and they're making money for the cruise lines, not for the destinations. They're a little vampire-ish that way, or a lot maybe.
Amazing. I'll tell you what, gentlemen, I'm unfortunately going to have to leave it there because we're completely out of time for this edition of the Newsmakers. I'd like to thank really all three of you so much for being with us. Great to have you, and our viewers, of course, for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on X, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.